Hi, I'm Amber Countryman. I'm an artist based in the Rockhampton region, and in order for me to tell you about my arts practice, I kind of need to tell you the story of how I became an artist and how I've evolved since. Now, it does start off a little bit depressing, but it does get much better, so hang in with me. The beginnings of me becoming an artist started when I was an at-home mum. I have two children. I have one with a disability and a medical condition, and the other with behavioural diagnosis. When my daughter was born, before I could even take her home from hospital for the first time, she already had two surgeries, one on her spine and one on her brain. Here she is here. She's a happy 10-year-old now, so it's all good. But for 5 years there, my life was, I was in survival mode. It was not fun, it was an existence. And I went through divorce as well. And look, eventually I started to get a handle on things, and I had a little bit of time here and there. And I started creating things, and I started decorating my home. And the feeling that I was left with after that creating was such a contrast to the rest of my life that I just kept going back. I wanted to feel good more and more, and I kept going back to create art. And that is how I became an artist. It was art therapy, basically, is how it all happened for me. Last year I wanted to kind of talk about that experience of being thrown into this world of disabilities and birth defects and the whole medical world, and what that was like for me. So I've started creating, this is going to be a medical chart, but from the mother's perspective. It's really a birth and rebirth story. This is the birth of my daughter, and this is the rebirth of me as a person. You become somebody new. So this is how it started, actually, the 20-week ultrasound. I thought I was coming out with some pretty pictures, and I come out with a whole new life. So that's how it started. Now, this is all painted in coffee and wine. I chose those because of the likeness to blood, but also coffee, alcohol and caffeine are things you stay away from when you're pregnant. You do all the right things, you're supposed to get the right result at the end. They're also forms of self-medicating as well. So I really wanted the materials that I use to be part of this story. I wanted to put big words in there because big words, they're this new language that you have to learn. You're talking to all these medical professionals, and it's so confusing. So when people look through this art book, I want them to be confused. I want them to be shocked at the blood splatters. I want them to feel those things as they turn the pages, because that's how it felt from my point of view. So, and you know, the anguish, is my child going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of their life? At the time, it's the worst thing in the world. Believe me, it's not. There's worse than that. But yeah, you know, it's unfinished, because you have to be in a certain place to create art like this. And at the moment, life is good. I'm not going back to finish this artwork just yet. So we'll put that aside. I've learned how to paint. I've learned how to use different materials and how to incorporate into that story. And I'll just put this back in the drawer, and when I'm ready, then that's when I'll finish that artwork. Back when I discovered this feeling that art gave me, I started creating using things that were around the home. I'm quite frugal as a person, but also environmental. So, you know, I started using discarded materials and making art out of those things, and actually ended up being an environmental artist for about 5 years. I did mainly public art and installations. And I did actually quite well as an environmental artist. My art's been seen by tens of thousands of people around the country. I've had a lot of great feedback and a lot of media attention. And I was driven, you know, I was purposeful, and I was out there to make the world a better place. You know, that was my purpose. So I'm proud of that. But then last year happened, and last year was not so good. So last year changed my arts practice. I had a few events happen in my life that I needed to deal with emotionally. I was offered 2 huge professional opportunities and lost them. There was family trauma, personal relationships. My daughter got sick and I thought that I might lose her, and that stuff affects you. And as the year progressed, I noticed that my art was being informed by my emotions and my experiences rather than my environmental concerns. I needed to process those emotions. I needed to get them out of me, and I needed to feel good again. So that's kind of how things have evolved for me since last year. And look, admittedly, I have been a little lost with purpose in that way, because I was so driven and I had this purpose, and then everything changed. This is the kind of art that I started creating in that time. And with the personal relationships and the things that had happened, you know what it's like when you feel like people are treating you poorly, and that's how I was feeling at the time as well. And I wanted to express that and get that out in a piece of artwork, so I had to work out how to do that. So I felt like a doormat, and so doormat came to mind, and so that's how the form of this sculpture came about. And the fetal position, this is a self-portrait. This is me curled up. This is me protecting myself. This is me hiding from those people who were treating me like that. And then I wanted it to stop, and I wanted people to stop walking over me, and I wanted them to know that. So how do you then portray that in an artwork? So then I started thinking about walking and tripwires and booby traps and things like that. So I wanted a deterrent there for people to stop walking over me. I'm sick of this. So that's where the tripwire came in, and these spikes. It's a deterrent. You can't walk over Amber Countryman anymore. So this was my first wood carving, and I was rather impressed with myself being able to actually do it and get the outcome that I was after. So this is this was where those emotions and those feelings started coming out in art. As I started creating these new artworks, I started sharing them on social media. I was nervous about it, and I didn't share all the details in the beginning, because these were my emotions and my personal experiences. And who cares, right? Like, what was the point of this? So then after a little while, I reminded myself of a playgroup that I used to attend when my kids were little. Every mother at that playgroup had a child with special needs or disabilities. It was not your average playgroup, believe me. And occasionally we would get the chance to sit and chat and share what was going on in our lives and fall apart and cry and all those things together. And in those conversations, through the sharing and it was an experience, and it gave us all strength. We all left those sessions able to cope with what we had to deal with at home. It's not a normal life that we lead. So it just gave strength, and remembering those playgroup sessions with those women, that's informing my art today, and that's informing the value that I place on sharing. So I feel like, what I'm doing here is the sharing. I've received the benefit of that. So this is my purpose now. This sculpture is called Gift, and I made this one after my daughter's little medical adventure last year. It's made from tissues and glue. So tissues obviously represent the emotions and the tears that come from, little medical adventures that we have that are a regular part of our life. And boxing gloves, because you have to fight. Like, you have to fight every time you go to the hospital, every time something happens and you know something's wrong and you aren't being listened to, you have to fight your whole life to make sure that you and your kids have a quality of life. You want to be happy, you know, even though you have these ups and downs. So that's what the boxing gloves are for. And this is your child's diagnosis. Everything changes once this arrives. There's no going back after that. So that's really important too. But it is a gift. This stuff is a gift. Like I said, my life has changed, and seriously, my life has changed for the better. We're a very happy family. We have a really full, happy life, and that's gratitude has got a lot to do with that. And I think we really value our good times, you know, because we have the bad times there, and that's the balance of life. So before all this happened, I didn't realise that, you know, mundane, that was how it was. Now, no, life is wonderful, you know, and I appreciate it. So that's the gift. When I post my artworks on social media, I usually write a bit of an explanation to go with them. Sometimes there's a hidden meaning in there. Sometimes I leave it quite general and just leave room for people to make up their own connection to the artwork. But whatever I do write, it's important for me to write and get it out of me in the hope that it's also going to help someone else. And I don't always find that bit out, but I do get messages from people, and I do get people pull me up in public and tell me what a particular artwork or a particular written piece has meant to them and how they related to it. So I do feel like what I'm doing has worth, and at this point in my life, I'm just trying to do what feels right, and this feels right to me, and this feels like my direction. So, private tea ceremony, this painting is actually painted with tea. So straight away you have the relationship between the materials and the meaning of the painting as well. So private tea ceremony, it's about that sacred little ceremony with yourself, loving yourself basically. This is about personal growth and about loving and appreciating who you are. As a young person, low self-esteem was my biggest problem, and I held myself back from so many things in life. And it's only, I'm 40 now. It's taken a while to get to this point. And it's through having my children and having to go through all those experiences, deal with all those medical professionals, having to stand up for what I believed in along the way. I was forced to do that, and I'm grateful for that. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, as I'm sure we all aren't, but I'm okay with that these days. You don't have to like me, I'm fine with that. I'm building self-esteem, obviously, you can hear that, and I'm developing strength, and the strength is about the personal growth and the resilience to go on and deal with all the ups and downs that are guaranteed to keep coming in life. So this can be very general and very relevant to a lot of people in their own way. So that's private tea ceremony. This sculpture was about some pretty intense feelings, not anger, but very close to. I had done well enough to be offered some huge opportunities as an artist, and then I lost them through, reasons that were nothing to do with me. And that hurt, I really wanted those opportunities, and I wanted what came after them. They were going to be like these platforms to leap off, and I lost all of that as well. So I was not in a good place at that point because I was so driven and, on that mission. So I felt like that donkey who, gets tricked to walk down the path with the carrot dangling in front of his face on the string and the stick. Never gets the carrot, does he? So feeling like the sucker I did, I grabbed the stick and I snapped it over my knee, and I've just bundled all this stuff up together and I've returned to sender. And clearly I wasn't going to use real carrots for this, so all the materials got an upgrade to make this something that could be displayed as an artwork. in a gallery or somewhere like that. So the carrots are made from clay, paper clay. The sticks are actually dowel that I've carved, and the string is a silk string. And as I was making these and I was bundling them up, some of them broke. There's a few little bits of carrot that have snapped off, and I thought, you know what? I'm frustrated at the moment and I'm doing this really tightly and I'm not being gentle, and in a way I think that shows when you have broken bits there, and I just do not care, because that is actually part of the feeling that was coming from this artwork. This sculpture really worked for me to be able to process those really horrible feelings. That trick where when you're feeling terrible and you write everything down on a piece of paper and you burn it, or you turn it into a paper aeroplane and you fly it away and you instantly feel better. That's what this kind of art does for me. It just allows me to kind of express it and get it out of my body, process it, and then feel good again. So there's that therapy in action again. So that's what art does for me. Art is not about play for me. It's not about looking pretty. It's not about money. It's about overcoming and then sharing in the hope that, you're going to make a difference somewhere down the track. This sculpture came about after that rough patch that I had. So this is about direction. This is a positive sculpture, onwards and upwards, clearly. And these, the writing's actually crushed eggshells that I've embedded in there. And I think that's because, you come out of these rough patches and you see the light again, and you start smiling again, and you change. Every rough patch you change, and I'm not going to be careful anymore. So I'm going to stomp on those eggshells. I'm going to crush them. It's not about being gentle. It's about, going onwards and upwards, and this is my direction. This is trajectory, and that's where I'm going. So this is a really positive sculpture from after that, all that rough stuff that happened. So this is on your way, get on with it. So as I've kind of explained, my inspiration for my art comes from emotions felt or experiences. Sometimes it's a conversation, sometimes it's a point I want to make, but I don't want to voice it verbally. And I really enjoy feeling that emotion and then working out how to then turn that into an artwork. And what materials can I use to be part of the story? What form is it going to take? What structure is going to be involved? Is it 2D even? So I really enjoy that problem solving and the challenge that comes through creating sculptures that I create. This one here started as a Christmas holiday activity, actually. My kids were with their dad for a little while, and I wanted to make something, anything. I didn't really want to get emotionally involved, but my brain wanted a problem to solve, my hands wanted something to do. And I had these old phone books lying around, and I had a hat box in there. So I sketched out an outline of a shape, and I just started twisting and gluing and twisting and gluing. And there's hours of work in this thing, and there's lots of paper and lots of glue. It's quite heavy. It was very telling, actually, how much I need to create. And so I kind of learnt a lot about myself with this sculpture, just that, I guess, that need for art that I have now that I didn't realise before. And so I've called it Dial a Therapist, because phone books, it was therapy. That's just the way it is. And then I've actually painted it in a fiberglass resin because I wanted it to have that durability, because I wanted to have a lifespan as a sculpture, but also I wanted it to appear as if it has durability and resilience, because that's what comes from doing the things you love. And whatever form of therapy yours is, it makes you healthy. It gives you a longer life, doesn't it? So clearly my art does not exist to be beautiful. Sometimes it happens, but it's in addition. So I want to go beyond the surface, and the meaning or the message is so much more important to me than aesthetics. And that's just who I am as a person as well as an artist. being an artist has helped me appreciate my differences. As I said, I've never felt like I fit in anywhere. But as an artist now, I understand that that's actually a good thing. That's actually something to be valued. So these days, I actually feel comfortable being myself and only myself. So that's massive as a person to finally get to that point in your life. This is another self-portrait. This is called The Overthinker. And this is inspired by a conversation, but of course inspired by August Rodin's The Thinker, you know, the thinker. So apparently I'm an overthinker, and apparently I have a very active brain, and I get told this quite a bit. I'm okay with that. So I'm always questioning and processing things and analysing things and people and situations and whatever. I see it as a strength. So this is my normal arm here, but I've kept quite a robust muscly arm on this side like the original sculpture because I see overthinking as a strength. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. You've got to use your brain. And just a hot tip for anyone out there who's going to tell an overthinker not to think about something. As soon as you do that, they're going to start questioning why you don't want them to think about that. So that's a little bit of a backfire, I have to say. So yeah, overthinking is a strength. Just keep it positive. You can see I'm primarily a sculptor, but I don't stick to specific materials because it depends on that individual artwork and the meaning that I want to draw out of those materials for that artwork. So as a consequence, quite a lot of what I do I've never done before. So every new sculpture can be an experiment. I actually find that very stimulating as an artist. I am a problem solver and I really like that the thinking that goes around every individual artwork. I get a real sense of accomplishment and I get really excited. And this is even before I've started the creating bit. So I love it and I get a lot of stimulation from being an artist. One last sculpture. This is Birds on Fire. This was a response to the bushfires that we all experienced here in Australia this year. I wasn't directly affected, thank goodness. A lot of people I know were. I did find myself unable to read the news reports on the wildlife and what was happening there. It just got too much and I just couldn't take that on board. I did want to do something with it though, and this was a tribute that I created. I had a piece of blue gum from my pop shed. Blue gum is the favourite food tree of koalas, so it just seemed fitting to create that. And I've made a feather because, you know, even the ones who could fly were still perished. So what hope did all the other animals have? It was heartbreaking, isn't it, really? So anyway, I've created this feather in the shape of flames and I've torched the edges of these flames with actual fire. And if I sell this, and I've made 5 smaller ones as well for cheaper prices, if I sell them, I'm going to donate that money to our local wildlife charities here because I feel like I want to do a little bit to help with that. So yeah, that's kind of my contribution, I guess. So there's a look at my arts practice and I hope you got something out of it, and thank you for listening.